Welcome everybody to Event Tech Live USA Canada 21 and to the final session of the day on the Omni stage. I'm delighted to say that delivering the session Experiences Need More Play. We welcome Senior Vice President, Head of JackX North America at Jack Morton, Mr. Scott Varland joins Event Tech Live. Scott, great to see you and thanks for being here.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me. Thanks, James.
You're
So, hi,
very
everybody.
welcome. No,
I'm glad to be the only
Scott,
thing in the
I'm
way
stepping
of
away.
happy hour.
I'm stepping away, Scott. Over to you.
Thanks. Great to be here. Yes, I am Scott, and it is correct that I am SVP, Head of Innovation, and I run our JackX practice in North America. So this is our global innovation practice, and I lead it in the good old US of A. Just a quick 10 seconds about me. I grew up as a digital native. Well, I started in theater school, grew up as a digital native, built games, experiences, interactive experiences for digital primarily. So this is my first foray into live events and experiences through Jack Morton. And I'm just thrilled about the possibilities that technology brings into physical spaces. Obviously, we were doing a lot of virtual work last year, but this is the time and the moment, I think, for convergence of different types of mediums. So that's why I brought this kind of provocative topic. I hope it's provocative, which is all about why experiences need more play or why they need more games or more game mechanics. And the provocative bit is really that, I get asked by clients a lot, how do we gamify this? How do we create more engagement? How do we create networking opportunities? And they think about, polling and chats and points and badges and things. And those are all fine and good. But I think there's a lot more that we can do and a lot more that's very interesting out there in the world. So I'm going to get right into it here. This is going to be pretty rapid fire, and I'm going to hopefully reserve a few minutes for questions at the end. So I thought, just to level set here, I should take us all on a very brief history of gaming, specifically video gaming. So if you don't know what this is, you can stand up and leave the room. This is, of course, Pong. Everyone, if you haven't played Pong, you at least know what it is. It was one of the first experiences I had playing games as a child in the 80s on Atari. But this was actually the predecessor to Pong, and it's called Tennis for Two. This was built at a laboratory in 1958. It was the first. It could be argued maybe it wasn't the first game, but it was certainly the first multiplayer game. And this was played, you're seeing a recreation. This isn't actually filmed from 1958, a recreation of the game. And it was played on an oscilloscope, which was prior to TVs and monitors. This was kind of the second effort at video gaming, and it really focused on multiplayer scenarios. This was built on a DEC System 10. And just to put that in perspective a little bit, my iPhone here is about 200,000 times more powerful than the mainframe that powered this. So 1 second of processing time on my iPhone would have taken the DEC PDP 10 about over a day to complete, which is pretty mind-boggling. So this is the computer, which is the size of several refrigerators. Space Wars went on to be a multiplayer success. This was back in 1972. A lot of kids. It was surprising to me to find that this was such a big deal back then, but it's true. And this guy named Stuart Brand, who was 33 at the time, he wrote for Rolling Stone, and he said the space war was an indication that computers were about to unleash creativity that would change the world. And that was in his article from that same year, 1972. And in fact, it did. Today, I can play Space Wars. This is the C+ code for Space Wars that I can now run on a computer this size. This is, for those of you who don't know, an Arduino Uno. Very primitive processor on this, very low power, This is used as a prototyping tool to create things like games and physical experiences. So most of us, though, entered maybe in the late 90s with the advent of PlayStation. This, of course, is Tomb Raider and Lara Croft herself, looking very pixelated. And just to give you a sense of how far we've come, this is the Lara Croft of 2021, rendered beautifully using Epic's Unreal Engine. It's just amazing, the level of detail, the character movement, everything. It's almost like I'm playing a movie these days. And who is a gamer? Well, the answer is it's pretty much everyone. 75% of households have at least a gamer in it. So if you aren't one, then you probably know one pretty well. And when we talk about games, it's not just the hardcore games, the people doing esports and League of Legends, but there's a lot of casual gamers out there. Candy Crush, Animal Crossing. There's basically a flavor for everyone and every play style. And they've gotten so big, things like League of Legends has gotten so big. So League of Legends is a massive multiplayer online game that is very popular with professional players. And this was the League of Legends World Championship right before the pandemic in 2019. The audience size, including in the auditorium here with 30,000 seats, was over 100 million. So that is larger than the Super Bowl here in the US. So this is not an emerging media anymore. It is bigger than anything that's come before it. It's bigger than physical sports. It's bigger than the movie industry. It's bigger than music. It's bigger than all of those things combined. And it has the potential to release mass audiences around the world. Number of active gamers, just to sort of prove my point, 2.81 billion in the US. This gives you a little sense of the breakdown. Mobile occupies about 50% of the game market. The other 50% is split between PC gaming, so gaming with your computer, and consoles. So that represents a 160 billion market, which is increasing about 10% every year. Gamers are also much more diverse than many of us imagine them to be. They're also about half female and half male, and that demographic is balancing pretty much every year. The average age of a gamer is about 33 years old, so we're also aging up. Soon we'll have the early millennials, with their own children who are gamers, and that's pretty cool. So let's take a look now at the events industry, and I'm sure you've heard a lot about this stuff this week. We've heard a lot about the successes and failures of going virtual, and I show some of these examples not to call them out. But because this was the pain that we were all going through in February, March, April last year, how do we recreate the magic of in-person experiences? I know that at Jack Morton, we had to pivot some events in weeks. And it was a massive lift to try to do that. So the technology, between the technology, training the presenters, modifying the content, adapting it for the screen, all of these were really difficult tests. Admittedly, a lot of these experiences fell rather flat. They did not get the engagement that everyone had hoped. We didn't have studios early on in the process, but we learned pretty quickly. And we learned with the help or guidance of some very large tech companies like Apple. I think everyone realized when Apple did their keynote that it was really about a cinematic relationship to the screen. That was that's the first thing you have to get right. You have to produce for TV. You have to produce for the camera. It takes presenters a lot more. They have to give a lot more to the camera in order to succeed. And you have to do things that the medium does very well, which is move people places. So I know we don't all have Apple kind of money, But Apple was very successful. They used the entire campus. They used drones. They used CGI. They built models and flew people in and out of these models. And there were no less than, I think, 20 locations for that Apple keynote. And it really shows you the lengths that you have to go through to keep people's attention. We found in our own virtual events that the total attention for your audience was around 2 hours, so about the length of a feature-length film. But for any given session, it was about 20 minutes before you started to see audience turn. So really important lessons that I think we carry forward as we move back into live experiences. Elsewhere, we did see, and this is where we start to see some of the things that look like games. I would call this an example of skeuomorphic design, which is a design language that's meant to look like real things. And there were certainly a number of platforms out there that tried to recreate the environments of convention halls digitally. And that was more or less successful. I guess my feedback on these types of experiences is that this is a very difficult thing for people to understand in terms of a conventional web UI. But maybe it makes you feel more comfortable and more like exploring to see something like this. Slightly more advanced, we saw a number, especially in the trade show space, a number of clients built virtual booths. So full 3D virtual booths that you could actually walk around digitally. You could explore, you could interact with the models, you could interact with the screens. These worked well enough in testing, and we actually saw that they were fairly engaging. But the problem, and I'm sure many in the audience have experienced this, it was very difficult to push clients toward these digital booths. Most people stayed glued to the main stage and stayed there for the duration. We also saw some event platforms spring up that really went full into the gaming world, right? So this is an example called AltSpace VR. And I think it was used rather successfully, right? Sure, it feels a little bit gimmicky, maybe even a little bit cheesy, but the ability to have your avatar to sort of, dress and show up the way that you want to. A lot of these use spatial audio, so you could actually, using your mouse or keyboard, walk over to someone and you would hear them more loudly as you got closer to them. It just generated more natural conversations, impromptu sort of water cooler talk. And it allowed people to explore a little more thoroughly than some of the more two-dimensional environments on the web. Even more advanced, toward the end of last year, we started to see companies basically doing the same thing that like AltSpace did, but with much more dramatic visuals, much more immersive environments, much closer to something like what we would experience in the latest and greatest PlayStations or Xboxes. This is a company called Walt Spanier. They are based in Germany, and they have a product called Journey. And their idea, and I really like it, is that a convention space, a venue, doesn't have to look anything like it does in the real world. And I think that's a very important lesson, because once you can kind of break out of that mold of, we have a building with rooms in it and chairs and such, it really allows for a much more immersive, interactive experience. You can do things that you can't do according to physics, which could be, very fun and playful. And really, this whole talk is about how we get people to have a little more fun, to come into our space, and to start to think differently, or at least forget, the rest of the world for a moment, so they can focus on our brand. Full into the gaming universe, we saw some really interesting experiments, and last year was a gift from the perspective of being able to run experiments. This is a company called Balenciaga, a fashion house, and they actually built and released a full video game. This was to support their Fall 21 collection. It was called Afterworld: The Age of Tomorrow. And while it maybe wouldn't meet the test with the most experienced gamers, it was really cool and really fun to explore. They had a bunch of narratives, Easter eggs within this, and of course, you were able to experience the fashion on all of the characters, and you were able to dress yourself, of course, in Balenciaga. Um, Louis Vuitton, the fashion house. So this is moving more into hybrid or sort of an XR stage. So for their women's spring and summer collection, they outfitted this space. Forgive me, I forget the name of the venue, with all green screens, and they sat socially distanced. A few of the fashion media around the space, but it was designed fully for it to be consumed from people's computers and laptops and phones and desktops. So they had robotic cameras that could fly all around the space. I'm sure it was pretty thrilling to sit there and be part of the live audience, but it was really designed for this in-person audience. So, games are culture, and when we see that, event marketers are reaching into the world of game mechanics, into game design, technology last year, there was a reason. And the reason was that the things that were working the best, or the things that we could actually show up and do, were all in the virtual world. I had quite a few friends, say that they had kids telling them they had to, go meet their friends in Fortnite. Because that's where they were hanging out. Even some professional athletes were taking to video games to continue to, stay relevant and stay in front of their fans. This is Derek Jones and Kevin Durant playing a game, not playing themselves, but the ESPN hosted this. It was called NBA 2K, and it was a tournament that players could compete for 100,000 to a charity. So Derek was playing a different team, and Kevin was playing a different team in their respective locations in Miami and Brooklyn. So really cool. Millions of people showed up to watch these professional athletes play a video game. Billie Eilish did an XR stage that really fully immersed a virtual audience, kind of brought them inside of her music and inside of her brain. Travis Scott, the artist, did a larger than life concert in Fortnite. So Fortnite actually created a mode called Party Royale. So this got people away from the sort of first person shooter action into just experiences, concerts, things like this. And it was amazingly successful. Here's Party Royale again. So they just had millions and millions of people showing up to go to these virtual events. So what this tells me is that virtual events really were working. They weren't working for everyone, but they certainly worked the best in the entertainment space. But there's no reason they can't work for brands and corporate conferences. Minecraft, another sandbox game that brought in all kinds of people. College students were recreating campuses in there. There were concerts held. This t-shirt says, "I literally went to the American football house in Minecraft." Politicians got into the act. So this is Animal Crossing, which is a very popular Nintendo game. Again, a sandbox game where anyone can set up any environment they want and invite their friends over. This is Facebook's Horizon. So an open sandbox play space and environment. We had meetings hosted in this environment where you put on VR goggles and see your colleagues as avatars. And then you can basically, with them, collaboratively craft this world around you. So we're talking about playful experiences. So now how do we translate this, right? So I assume some of you are agency folks and you've seen client briefs. This looks like a client brief that I receive a lot, right? So mission number 1, breakthrough award-winning brand experience. Yes, okay. Please move mountain more to the left. Add gamification. So it's that last one that I really want to get to, right? There are some brands that have been very successful. Starbucks, for example, with their rewards program. Nike with the Nike Run Club, in terms of encouraging people to do behaviors, to buy more coffee, all using the magic of game mechanics. But I would suggest this is really just scratching the surface. And I think that the biggest opportunity is really to bring people into events and experiences and bring them into a game world where every single thing is touched by game theory. every single thing makes use of game tools, game technology. And we've actually, and this is the reason I put the statue of Apollo up, we have recently created a team within Jack Morton that only does game design. These are graduates, people that come from the world of gaming who design games for a living, but we've applied them to client briefs and client challenges. And we found that this has been key to unlocking new opportunities in our business and for our clients. So what did they talk to us about? A lot. It's fairly simple. It's this concept of the magic circle. And, the subtle shift from talking about gamification or how do we gamify this to how do we invite people into our magic circle, I think is a really powerful one. Because to play a game means entering into a magic circle, right? Or maybe you create one on demand. I know my 3-year-old is very good at that. And it's very simple to understand. It's a playground, right? So in the real world, you might be kicking a ball into a net, but in the playground, you're scoring a goal. And that's a very, very important difference. Who is very good at this? Disney is very good about creating the magic circle. I mean, just think about the process of waiting in line to get on a ride, to go on Space Mountain. That all serves to bring you into this new world, to understand the new rules, to help you kind of go beyond your day-to-day life. And that's really what we want people to do when they're interacting with our products, when they're interacting with our services and our brand on site. Certainly in the theater world, so this is Sleep No More, very popular performance where you, the audience, walked around the space, right? And it used basically looking as a mechanic. It was a game, but the only thing that you had to do was look. And you also had to choose where to go and which parts of the story you got to see. This is another type of game. So this was Nike's Infinite Loop. Jack Morton actually produced this. I just got to mention that. But this was a game about competing with yourself. Even though you wouldn't look at this and say it was a game, it certainly was. And that's what made it so attractive and appealing. IKEA has done similar things. So maybe it's a stretch to call this a game, but this was a climbing wall of IKEA furniture. You can certainly say that it's playful. So here's the call to action. It's a fertile field out there. And there is so much we can learn from games, from game designers, from people that play games. And I think now is the opportunity because 2020 was such an accelerator for the convergence of digital and physical, online and offline experiences, that audiences are primed to engage with these types of things. People are familiar with game controls, with gaming devices, and they're highly effective, right? So here are our platforms. Here's how we approach thinking about game design and really thinking about experience design at all, right? We think about immersion, we think about responsiveness, we think about curation. So this could be personalization, and we think about connecting that to a bigger experience, right? It doesn't have to be just this moment in this room at this time. We've started thinking about our events in terms of, what happens in the 3 months before and the 3 weeks after. And that is an important element of play. So these are our pillars. We use them creatively. We use them in our workshops. If you want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to kind of share those. We publish quarterly papers related to the types of things and the design approaches that we use for experiences. But here are 4 ways in, and then I'll open it up to questions. So I think you or your brand could adopt an existing game, just like the Biden campaign did with Animal Crossing. You can certainly leverage technologies developed for video games to create more immersive environments, like from Unity or Epic's Unreal Engine, or just something very simple like a Minecraft voxel-based system. Think about what's inside your brand's magic circle. We say that all brands are experiential brands now. What does that mean? How does your experience change when you're using your soap, right? And make your next experience a transmedia one. There's no need to keep everyone in a box in a rectangle for the entire thing. We can take people places. People are used to, through digital mediums, moving between browser windows, moving between devices, doing a second screen experience on your television. We have access to over-the-top television. Every brand can have a TV channel now. There are just wondrous things that we can do. And I think the key to making the best possible use of those technologies is to approach experience design as a game designer would. So that is what I have for you. I've left my email. I would be happy and excited to make some new LinkedIn friends, or if you guys want to reach out to me and talk about this more. I know that was short, but hopefully sweet. And now I'll open it up to questions.
Scott, thank you very much indeed. It was short, it was succinct, but it was excellent. It was engaging. It was everything that we hoped it would be to wrap up day 2 on our Omni stage here. Thank you very much for the session. Let's go to some comments, first of all, that I'm sure you'll be keen to hear that have come in during the session. Somebody's just posted into the grip chat. I'm not a gamer, but a huge fan of anything augmented, virtual, or mixed reality. Love how we can utilize these tools for event experiences. Augmented and mixed reality is perfect for experiential learning and has been used even for surgeons and now in actual surgeries. That's a comment that's come in. Thank you to whoever's posted that in the grip chat. And also thank you to a couple of other people. There's been a discussion in the chat whilst your session, whilst you've been speaking, Scott, just about examples of other immersive experiences. Some great conversations and links that have been posted into the chat during your session. Let's turn to a couple of questions that have come in, if we can, before we wrap up the session. And the first one, I think this is very relevant to one of the comments you made about that particular gaming event being bigger than the Super Bowl. In terms of the viewing audience and the audience that was there in the arena. We hear lots about adding gaming elements to events, but considering the number of gamers playing online, should we actually be thinking about running more events in games?
It's a really good question. I mean, I think the state of the industry, the state of the technology right now, it's certainly easier to get your brand into a game, into Fortnite, or into a sandbox environment like Minecraft or Facebook Horizon. And I think that there's a lot to be said from testing and learning before you hire a bunch of game designers. But that's, I think that's the gateway drug. And once you've done that, it's really empowering to know that these things are not terribly hard. That we've been doing games and video games since the 1970s. There are a lot of people out there that are super excited to help you out, take the red pill.
In a similar sort of vein, going to another question that's been posted on Glisser during the session, should event organisers be looking to the gaming communities for inspiration? We've heard lots in the last couple of days about forming virtual online event communities, but gamers and gaming companies have been doing this for years. So perhaps rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, events could actually look to see what they've been doing really well for the last decade in the gaming community.
Yeah, gamers, game developers, publishers, the esports leagues are all highly skilled at forming online communities of tens of millions of people. And so I'd say, best advice is talk to a gamer, or even better yet, talk to someone that makes games at this scale. Certainly they have the advantage of being entertainment, but yeah, there are so many, known things that work, known approaches, tropes, mechanics, things that work in the space, and we should steal them and we should use them every day. I think the most important, and I think I said this, is you can't really bolt a game onto, or gamification onto your event. You have to design it from the get-go to be a game-like or a playful experience.
Absolutely. It's been a fascinating insight, and I thank you for your time. Scott Varland is the Senior Vice President, Head of Jack X North America at Jack Morton. As he's mentioned in his session, if you want to search for Scott, connect with him, pick his brains on this, because I'm sure there's been loads of people watching this session today who maybe have had their eyes opened a little bit to some of the possibilities that are just there and perhaps are already they're ready to go if they want to tap into them. Scott, it's been great to have you at Event Tech Live. Thanks so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again very soon.